our practice for the 6th limb of yoga. We're going to be working on dharana today. And dharana is the practice of concentration, of being able to focus the mind, draw all the attention and the energy to one point. So we're going to start out with a technique of fixing the eye gaze on a candle or on some other kind of object. It might be a flower or a picture, anything that you feel like would be something that can hold your attention that you can gaze at for a period of time. So let's come over to our mat. Okay, so we're going to start in a comfortable seat. And as you come into your comfortable seat, you're going to put your object of focus in front of you, whether that's your flower or a picture, or in this case, a candle. And the candle gazing is a very specific technique that we talked about in the yoga board. So positioning that candle perfectly so that you can gaze right at the flame. Settling into your comfortable seat and fixing your eyes on that point of the candle, right on the flame. When you feel the need to blink, you can definitely blink, but try to sustain that gaze for a period of time in between each blink. What will happen is you start to notice that the image around you starts to get fuzzy or dark, and your attention or your visual attention of that candle becomes very sharp right at the center of the flame. Now slowly closing your eyes and seeing what kind of images you have once the eyes are closed. There's going to be kind of a residue of what you were looking at. It might just be shapes or colors. You might be able to actually see the pinpointed area where the candle flame was. We focus our attention on that image. As you exhale, join the hands together in front of the heart. Take a full breath there. And then we'll open the eyes. So we're going to be practicing some different variations of poses that are going to require a steady gaze, whether that is a gaze with the eyes open or a gaze with the eyes shut. And a lot of times in yoga we'll call this the drishti point. It's a very strong gaze where all of our attention and all of our internal energy is directed toward that one point. It helps to keep our steadiness when we're in standing poses or balancing poses, but more importantly, it keeps our mind steady so that the mind doesn't start to wander and think about other things. So we'll start out with the arms straight out front. Lift the thumbs right in front of you. Our first drishti point is going to be the tip of the thumb or the thumbnail. And we'll use this for a twisting warm-up. Taking your left arm, swinging it back, following that thumb with your gaze. Now being cautious with your neck. If it's uncomfortable for you to turn your head quite that far, Maybe back off a little bit with the arm. Bring it closer to your field of vision. Coming back into center, and then we'll do the same thing with the other hand, following the thumb back, keeping it in your gaze. Coming back into center, drawing the hands into the heart. As you close your eyes, we'll work on an internal gaze. So there's a few different internal gazes that we can use. One is the point at the third eye, which is a great one for this practice since we're talking about focus. The other one is the tip of the nose or the navel point. So any one of those that works for you, but definitely the third eye is one that really strongly correlates with what we're talking about during our practice. Let your hands drop down to the sides. And I'm going to turn my gaze toward my right thumb, sweeping the hand up and over. And again, be cautious with your neck. If gazing up toward your hand bothers your neck, you can turn your gaze and look straight ahead or down toward the other thumb. If you feel comfortable lifting your drishti point toward your top thumb, use that as a way to lift your chest and create space across the front of the body. Inhale to come up. Exhale, dropping the hands down. Then we'll do the other hand, looking at your left thumb and tracking that all the way up as the hand comes over into your side bend. Coming back up into center. Taking a big shoulder roll back, and then we're going to swing over onto hands and knees. If you like a cushion for your knees, you can throw your blanket or a towel, anything, right onto the center of the mat so that the knees are happy. Okay, setting up in table, we'll take a cat and cow movement to warm up the spine. We can feel the end range movements of the spine here as we drop the rib cage and the pelvis forward, and then we draw the rib cage and the pelvis back. Stopping somewhere in between there where there's a strong connection between the rim of the rib cage and the rim of the pelvis, wrapping the muscles around what we call the core to create that connection. Holding that connection as you tuck your toes underneath and lift the hips back and up into downward facing dog. You can take some movements there to get comfortable in your down dog. And then settle into stillness, let the eyes close, and bring your drishti, your internal drishti, to the navel point. We're trying to keep that area of strength in the center so that our rib cage doesn't pop forward. Keeping the connection between the ribs and the pelvis, the upper and the lower body. Okay, now we're going to take an exhale. Step your left foot to the outer edge of your mat so that we end up in a wide stance in our lunge. And then we're just taking a breath there. Start to sway your hips from side to side. We're going to do some hip opening to work toward archer pose, or a variation of archer pose, which is probably what we'll stick with today. As you sway the hips from side to side, then you might feel natural to just kind of progress that into a circle. I think of it like the movement of a jump rope. Come into center. Settle your hips, settle your right hand underneath your shoulder. Then we're going to inhale the left arm up. Exhale, find the last bit of rotation along your spinal column. The gaze is up toward the left, or maybe toward the left thumb, if it's in your field of vision. But up toward the left is one of our 9 dristis. As you feel the lift and you feel the rotation in the upper body, balance that out by pushing into the outer corner of your right heel. That's going to keep this hip from dropping and sagging underneath you. We want to keep some integrity over on the right side of the body. Good, drop that hand down. We're going to step the foot out wide and back to the end of the mat for downward facing dog. Bringing your focus back to your navel point. Now let's use an exhale to step the right foot to the outside of the mat into a wide stance in our lunge. And then just like we did on the other side, we start by swaying the hips from side to side. Warming up around the pelvic girdle, all the muscles that wrap around the hips and the pelvis. So then you might feel like you can naturally open that movement up into a full circle. A couple circles in each direction. Settling back into center. Plant the left hand underneath your shoulder. Take a big inhale, open the right arm up. Spread out through the fingers, get a strong upward reach. Balance that out by exhaling heaviness down into the pelvis. Your gaze is up toward the right or up toward the thumb. Releasing your right hand down. We're going to swing that foot back the same way. So we swing it out wide, bring it back into down dog. Take an exhale, let your knees drop down. Bring your hands together. We're going to rest the forehead onto the hands. Closing the eyes, creating an internal drishti point at the third eye. As you inhale, eyes open, walking the hands up into table, tucking the toes underneath, and drawing the hips back into down dog. Using our same lunge, let's step the left foot wide, and then the right foot wide. So we end up in this really nice wide squat. And the spine is pretty flat. We're coming halfway up. We're letting the hips drop down. The crown of the head is reaching forward. Trying to flatten out the back as much as I can. So we don't want this kind of rounded, hunched shape. We get enough of that during the day, so we're trying to even it out. Bringing the hands together, pushing into the feet, and pressing yourself all the way up into standing. You can bring the feet together, and then inhaling, rising up with the arms, lifting the head. We can gaze at the thumbs or past the thumbs up toward the ceiling. Exhale to come down, tap the third eye, and come into the heart. Releasing your hands down. Okay, so here is our first version of the archer pose. And I'm going to start from the back of my mat. And I'm going to take my right leg and step forward. And I'm stepping into a warrior 2 stance. So I'm angling my back foot and then bending my front leg. So here, I'm going to bring the right arm forward and then clasp like I'm holding the bow. My thumb is straight up so that I can have that laser focused gaze right at the tip of my thumb. Now my other hand is coming here like I'm drawing the bow back. And holding there. Feel the steadiness of the gaze. Feel the steadiness of the mind. We're going to add in a breath of fire. We'll do some pranayama here. And breath of fire is going to help to increase that internal fire that burns through the things that cause confusion or clutter in our life. So if you have a lot of junk floating around in your mind, this is a great practice to burn through that and create clarity. So we're doing a quick, short inhale and exhale that focuses right around the belly button. Slow that breath down. Release your bow. Drop your arms down. And we're going to step that foot back on the mat. Roll the arms back. Take your inhale. Gaze lifts up toward the thumbs or up toward the ceiling if that feels okay on your neck. On your exhale, bow down toward the earth. And here our focus comes to the big toes. This is our next drishti point. You can wrap your index finger and middle finger around the big toe and then gazing right at the tip. Inhale, come halfway up, keeping the eyes focused on the big toes. Exhale, folding down, softening the knees, taking your inhale up through center line, lifting the gaze, exhaling down through the heart. Okay, now stepping out with the left leg into your warrior 2 stance, being really cautious to set up the front knee properly to get a good stance where you feel steady. Since we know that we're adding the breath of fire here, you want to be able to stabilize around the pelvis. Taking the left hand forward, curl the fingers in. Gaze is right at the tip of the thumb with complete focus. We come over with the right hand, draw that bowstring back. Strong focus with the eyes. And we'll start our breath of fire. Slow that breath down, but keep your focus just as strong. Release the hands. Let them drop down. We're going to step ourselves toward the back of the mat again. Inhale up center. Exhale down center. Wrapping the fingers around the big toes and fixing your gaze at the toes. Take an inhale, come halfway up. And exhale down. Now, when we're holding on to the big toes, we can come into this lovely variation where we're going to put all of our weight onto the left foot. And with your weight on the left foot, start to draw your right foot out toward the side, any amount. It can be 2 inches, it can be halfway up, it can be all the way up at a right angle. So watch out for environmental obstacles. So that you're working a lot on stabilizing your hip. Coming down from that version, taking a moment to pause in your forward bend, and then shift the weight onto your right foot. And we'll do the same thing on this side. Start to lift your foot up 1 inch, 2 inches, maybe halfway, or moving toward 90 degrees. Be careful you don't get a hip cramp. Watch your balance. And then when you're ready, slowly lower down, release the toes, and fold into it. Take an inhale halfway up, keep the gaze at the big toes. Exhale down, soft knees. Inhale all the way up. So now if you have your blanket there, I'm just going to move that out of the way so that we can come into a fun balance pose that is rather challenging because our drishti point is going to move. So we're going to use that drishti point of the thumbs just like we started out seated. But the difference is that we're up on the ball of the foot and the toes, so we're starting out in a toe balance. And this one, for as many times as I've practiced it never gets easier. So if you feel like you're struggling with this one, don't worry about it. It's meant to be challenging. The arms start out in front, gazing at the thumbs. I'm going to fix on the right thumb and then start to open that thumb out toward the side. Steady gaze, steady breath, steady the pose. Bringing the right hand back to center. Embracing that wobbling as part of the challenge. Drop the heels down, come into center for a moment of rest. Lift back up onto the toes. Heels are nice and high. Bring the arms out front. Now fixing on the tip of the left thumb. And start to move that hand out and around into your twist. And if you fall out of the pose, no big deal. Just give yourself a moment to ground and then come back into it. Bringing the thumbs together, coming back into the heart. Letting your arms drop down. Okay, now external drishti for this one. We're going to take dancer pose, and dancer pose is a challenging balance as well, but we want to have that strong forward gaze at a specific point, which is not one of the technical 9 drishti points, forward at an external object. We're going to start by clasping the right foot behind us, and I like to hold the big toe side of the foot because it gives me an opening in my chest. Helps to externally rotate the shoulder. The arms come forward. So in this situation you can gaze at the thumb again if you like that thumb drishti point, and then start to pivot forward. Fixing the gaze, using that to steady the breath and steady the pose. Being completely content with whatever your pose is right now. Take your inhale, draw back up, keep the focus the whole time. Release the back foot, release the hand. Let's switch that to the other side. Bringing the left foot back. So you'll see I'm going to switch my hand to the big toe side of the foot. If you like that, you can use that version. Bring the arms out front. Maybe fixing on the thumb, or send your drishti out towards something that you can gaze at in front of you. We find the expression of dancer pose where you feel some challenge, but you're not straining, you're not struggling, the breath isn't short. You can breathe freely, and you settle into that space of contentment with whatever this shape is right now. Slowly inhaling your way up, releasing the foot, releasing the hands, and we'll come into Samastrihi, equal standing, balanced, steady, and grounded, with the eyes closed and an internal drishti at the third eye, that point of clarity in the mind, having an inner vision. And we'll hold on to that clarity as we make our way back down to the mat. So take your exhale, fold over the legs, eyes open up, we gaze at the big toes. And then heel toeing the feet out wide. Take your exhale, start to bend your knees into that nice squat. One more pose to really work into the hips. Take your left foot, step it back. Take your right foot and step that back. Letting the eyes close, fixing your gaze at the navel point. Feeling the integrity of the pose right through the center. Don't let the rib cage pop forward. Don't let the lower back round. Very straight, very strong. As you exhale, let your knees drop down. Slide your knees to the outer edges of the mat so we have a wide leg version of child's pose. And there, we can sink down and take a few resting breaths. Inhaling, working your way up into sitting. And now I'm going to take the blanket and just swing it around so that I can use it to sit on. Bringing both feet out in front, pulling the knees back, wrapping the arms around. We're going to work toward a seated version of archer because it's another pose where we have that strong focus and concentration, that strong vision. I'm going to take my right foot and drop it down, dropping my right knee down. So this is going to stabilize me. I'm going to start out with heron pose, which is for opening up the back of the leg. So clasping the left foot, the left ankle, the left big toe, whatever you like to clasp on that side. And then start to press the foot up, and I'm gazing right at the tip of the big toe. But my focus is on trying to lift my heart, holding onto your foot or your ankle or your toe or using a strap, whatever you feel like helps you to find the version of this pose that works the best. And then lifting your heart up towards your big toe, fixing your gaze at the point at the end of your big toe. As you exhale, release that foot down. pull the knees back into your chest. Now moving into a version of archer pose, and this is a pose that requires a fairly high amount of hip flexibility. So I'm going to take a modified version today. But the right leg starts straight out, toes are fanned, and then I'm going to grab underneath my foot on the left side, and I'm taking the knee out toward the side of my body, drawing it straight back with my arm. You can take your fingers and wrap around the big toe. That's a really nice version. And then this arm ideally would be holding on to the other big toe. I haven't quite gotten there yet. So I'm just going to settle onto my leg somewhere that I can maintain a bit of lift. I don't want to hunch and go for the big toe. So I'm going to stay right here. If you can grab your big toe, that's great. Or if you want to throw a strap around it too, that's a nice way to modify the pose. Find your strong focus. Use that to keep the mind steady. And then as you exhale, release that foot down. We will switch to the other side. Left leg is out. Spread your toes. Gaze is directly at the big toe. I'm going to take the right big toe. And I'm drawing the knee back past my body. Inhale, use that to lift the front of the body, and maybe the left hand wants to reach down. Eventually it will grab that big toe. Maybe not today, but one day. Release your foot down. Hug your knees into your chest. And then we'll carefully scoot the feet forward and roll yourself down onto your back. Take your exhale and bring your knees into your chest. We'll take a wide knee version of Upanasana and rock from side to side like that. And walking your hands to the insides of the legs, you might want to wrap around the big toe or hold on to the arch of the foot. The ankle. We'll come into happy baby. So very similar to the movement of archer pose of trying to draw the knee out toward the side past my body. It's a very similar movement here, but with both legs. And the nice thing is we have the support of the floor. Starting to bring the legs toward the center and find some degree of straightness with the legs. They don't have to go all the way straight. Return your gaze to the end of the big toes. We'll take a few breaths here with the body upside down, using this as our inversion. Starting to bend the knees, releasing the feet as your arms come down, settling them on the mat, letting your knees sway from side to side. Drop your feet onto the floor and stretch the legs out. Finding a comfortable position for Shavasana. We take the focus inside, starting with a focus at the third eye, using that to bring you to a space of clarity in the mind, clarity in your thoughts. And that very specific focal point starts to dissolve. And we spend the rest of our time in Shavasana just enjoying the experience of existing.